So in this video, you're gonna see a conversation between Zachary Hogan and myself. We talked about risk management, the essentials, a lot of the failures and mistakes that we've made, the limiting beliefs, scarcity mindset, improper expectations, you name it. So we had a conversation about a lot of the ways that we failed in the beginning, and hopefully that gives you some light on what things you can do differently. Maybe you'll resonate with it. But regardless, we have Zachary Hogan today, someone who's been in this space for almost 10 years, tons of experience. He's helped hundreds of thousands of people throughout the years. So someone I had such a good conversation with, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. We got USD CAD in the flesh, guys. I need to make sure I introduce Zachary Hogan. Some of you, I know many of you who are newer to trading. Some of you are OGs in this space, and I'm seeing in the chat, that's my mentor. I'm seeing a lot of pride, and I know people are excited for this. I got a lot of messages about this one. But guys, if you're not familiar with Zachary Hogan, this is one of the people that I really admire the most in this space for a few different reasons. But specifically, I think this training and this session is very intentional, which having to do with risk management and probably more so mindset management in the trading space. This is someone who I know has been trading, I think 8 years or so, if I'm not mistaken. I know someone who's had experience with all kinds of people from all over the world. This is not his first educational company by any means as well. So he's been doing this before this company itself, and trading different markets, different asset classes. And so you guys are in for a special treat, because I would say, and maybe I'm prideful, maybe I have ego, but I'm very aware of the trading space, and I don't listen to anybody, right? I don't listen to just anybody, right? I'm really careful with who I allow to kind of influence my thought processes and how I look at things and how I perceive things. And Zachary is one of those people that I know has the intention, the knowledge, but also the receipts. And that last part is very important. And so someone who just really embodies what he teaches. And so we're going to have a pretty good session today. This is not going to be just one person kind of saying things that you kind of call. And we're going to vibe it a little bit. We're going to converse, think about this in more of a podcast style. But Zachary, man, thank you for giving us your time. I know you're out and about. You're out there. It's always good. You're feeling it. So, I mean, Zach, how are you doing, bro? I know we called this one Risk Management Essentials, but before we dive into the risk management, how are you, bro? How you feeling?
I'm feeling blessed, feeling grateful. Beautiful day, beautiful life. We are about 40 days from convention, like you're mentioning. Closer to 31 days, actually, if you're tuning in with us from Europe. But man, I'm just feeling incredible. 2023 has brought so many blessings already, and it's only February. And for everybody that's here with us right now, if this is your first time being on a training with me, or even just really plugging in to the system and to the value that's available here, the one thing that I want you to realize is that you are in the right place at the right time with the right people. And I'm not just talking about being here on this call. I'm talking about the phase of life that we're in. The fact that we have such a high level of accessibility to be able to tap in and trade in these financial markets. I want you to realize that right now, no matter where you are and no matter what level of experience you have, you're destined for greatness. It's just a matter of what you're going to do to make that happen. And the financial markets, in my opinion, are a great way to use as a vehicle to get to that level of success you're looking for. So I'm feeling amazing, Mike. How about you, brother? How are you doing today?
I'm great, man. Feeling good. It's funny. I like how you mentioned just the awareness of the space and time that we're in. I was watching the Madoff documentary.
Ooh.
So if you guys don't know who that is, Madoff basically is the OG, not the OG, but basically the OG scammer. The OG scammer. This is someone who found a way to collectively create a $64 billion Ponzi, billion with the B. And so how does that even happen? And I'm not really gonna go into that. Maybe we'll talk about that at a different time. But what I'm getting at is this started before people were trading off of their phones. This started before people were trading off of computers. So it's just a whole different type of landscape in the trading space. And everyone that's right now connected to this wouldn't have been possible even 15 years ago. So understanding the accessibility, and I want to kind of lean into now the risk management part of things. With that being said, and I want to get your thoughts on this, the fact that trading is so accessible, do you think that's a double-edged sword? The fact that there's a lot less resistance, there's a lot less blocks to get to trading. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's a blessing in a sense that so many more people have access to the opportunity that the financial markets can bring. And I think that everybody that's here on this call right now would agree in some way, whether it's directly from what you've personally experienced so far, or whether it's from somebody that you've seen experience a transformation, the financial markets are a very powerful way for us to elevate and for us to be able to acquire more resources, for us to be able to really grow financially and in other ways as well. Now, at the same time, while it is a blessing, I do agree there's also some things that are kind of disguised, and whether that comes in the form of the way that things are educated upon, or the amount of information that's out there, it can be easy to kind of get lost in the sauce. And especially when you're brand new, just getting started, kind of finding your way as a market participant. I remember what it was like when I first got started back in 2013. It was when I was first introduced to the markets, but I really didn't start trading until 2014. And when I think back on the different types of experiences that I had when I first got started compared to what the landscape looks like now, it's a completely different situation. So I think that one of the biggest things that I would encourage you to leverage and to lean into, especially if you're brand new, is information like this, what Mike and I are sharing with you right now, to really be able to learn from our experiences so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that we did. And I'm sure that both of us could tell you, a list this long of things that we could have done differently or shouldn't have done at all. But I really do think that while it is a blessing, there definitely are a lot of potential pitfalls that you just have to watch out for. And real quick, could you make me co-host just so that I can mute and unmute without having the thing come up?
I don't know if I can actually do that. You can blame John Guaman. So I actually just mute yourself and then I'll unmute whenever I see that you've done that. So what I agree with you guys, and I want to say from personal experience, I underestimated this. Like, I highly underestimated trading. Anyone else, let me know. But I looked at this and I was like, all right, cool. It's trading like off my phone. This is going to be a pretty straightforward concept, And it's like I overestimated and I underestimated. Like, once I was kind of in, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I put money in this thing, and if it goes up, you can make money. If it goes down, we can also make money. Cool. And I don't think it's super complicated, but I just think there's a couple key things that kind of test us, and we're not really born to trade, or we're born to trade, but we're not raised to trade. Ooh, that's the one. We're born to trade, but we're not raised to trade. And that's where the whole reprogramming and rewiring comes from. And so did you underestimate? What are things that you think most people starting off, because we're going to hit a couple different points, right? We're going to hit for beginners, we got y'all, intermediate, we have you. And if you're a veteran trader, believe me, we're going to get to some things where you're going to be like, that's the thing. There's going to be one thing at least for everybody on this call. But what did you underestimate coming into trading? What was one of those things that you, now knowing what you know, right? Knowing what you know, what did you underestimate coming into this? I know I underestimated a lot of things, but what are some things that now, 10 years later, what do you think?
Man, well, I want to just go back for a moment to what you had said a moment ago about we were born to trade, but we weren't raised to, because I think that ties in with what I want to start by sharing with what I underestimated. And when I first got started with this, my conditioning and my belief system wasn't in alignment with where it needed to be in order for me to even have a solid foundation to get started. You see, I came into this industry with a mindset similar to a lot of people. You see the money, you see the potential, it looks easy. You see people, on social media doing what they do.
Yeah.
But I really didn't have the framework or the hands-on experience to be able to have a solid understanding of, well, this is perhaps what I should do. I had a certain expectation of what I thought was supposed to happen, and I underestimated what the process was actually going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the biggest thing, the conditioning of having to unlearn certain things that were holding me back, whether it was due to the strategy of how I approached the markets, due to the risk management, and how my personality affected that. And we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But the conditioning and the expectations, I think more than anything, were my biggest, my biggest thing that I had to work with for what I underestimated.
That's expectations, one of those. Like, I think expectations to me are kind of the make or break in trading. I really think, like, if out of every possible way that you can really, mess this up, I think expectations are, because there's a lot of ways, trust me.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's a million different ways to do this wrong, and there's also a million different ways to do it right. But I think it's the expectation is the one that kind of cuts the process. I think expectations is that one thing where like the average lifespan of a trader is aggressively destroyed based on expectations. Like, I can't imagine how many qualified people didn't get to month 6, didn't get to year 1, year 2. I'm sure some of you here, your expectations cut your process by month 3. A year later, 2 years later, you came back into it because you just you gravitated towards it. But I think expectations, that's one of them. Probably, if I'm really looking at the whole landscape of trading, I'd say that's it. And my encouragement for anybody here is just reevaluate your current expectations for sure.
100%. And just to continue on one of the ideas that you brought up on how there's a lot of ways you can do things really right, but there's also a lot of ways you can do things really wrong. I think that one thing that a lot of people get caught up on, and this ties in with the idea of expectations, is you could be doing the wrong thing and still producing a favorable outcome.
100%.
So what I mean by that is, perfect example that I know I've experienced, and I'm sure that many of you have experienced as well. You input that larger lot size than you perhaps should on the topic of risk management. It could result in you winning and perhaps having a larger win than you may have experienced before, or a larger win than you might have had if you were using risk management. But doing that consistently over an extended period of time, you're not building the right habit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need to realize that even though you may be getting a specific outcome that looks good, if you're not building the foundation for long-term consistency, and you're actually achieving that outcome by doing something that's perhaps not the best way to do it, then you really have to take a step back and manage your expectations of what you want to achieve from this process. Because just like what Mike was talking about a moment ago, there are a lot of people, even that I know personally, that were qualified to be able to really learn this skill set and do some great things with it that didn't make it past year 1 or year 2 or year 3 because they weren't doing the right things consistently. And so they didn't set themselves up for success.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is goes back to a pretty classic saying, time promotes you or exposes you, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the short term, right? When we have a short-term perspective, you can do the wrong things and win, right? Here's a couple good examples for you guys. In a bull run, right? In a bull run, a lot of people saw paper profits, but when the market rebalances itself, a lot of people, not only did they not see those paper profits, but they actually ended up losing. And we've seen plenty of examples of this happening. I mean, so many times. We saw it with Celsius, we saw it with Luna, we saw it with FTX. We've seen it. I mean, and that's just crypto. This doesn't even include banks. We saw it with Lehman Brothers in 2008. So, I mean, we can just go on and on. Ponzi's, like literally Ponzi's, $64 billion, Voyager. We saw these things happen because when you're doing the wrong things, but you're seeing good outcomes, what is leading you to changing? You don't, because you've never seen the downside of the wrong things. It's like, here's a good example. Okay, do you want to get skinny? Go smoke a ton of cigarettes. Smoke a ton of cigarettes. You can get skinny, but does that mean that you're healthy? And will you actually go long enough to see if that's really the outcome that you want? So it's like, do you want to be healthy or do you just want the short-term outcome?
Yeah.
And that's a drastic, obviously, concept, but you get the point. And unfortunately, I would say ego is very much so correlated with traders. I don't know about you, but since I've been trading, I think traders are some of the most egotistical people that I've met. And I've got to meet a lot of types of people. So what do you think makes traders, what do you think elevates ego in traders? How does that influence risking when you're trading on a day-to-day basis? What do you think about that?
I think that a big part of it comes with the type of results you experience. It's that whole idea that it's fast and won't last. And I want to give a couple of examples that I think that most people here should relate with. This first one's going to be a little bit silly, but when you were younger, okay, you can drop a 7 in the chat if this was you. Were you the type of person as a kid when if you shut the lights off, you would run and jump onto your bed because you wanted to minimize the amount of time between turning the lights off and being safe in bed so that the monsters or whatever didn't get you?
Someone
Some of you still do that, okay? Now, what about when you go to cross the street, right? Traditionally, you're supposed to look both ways. You look left, you look right. Sometimes you do the double take. You might run, but you want to make sure that you're implementing that level of risk management to make sure that you're protecting yourself. It's the same thing with trading. When you come into this industry, you're like a blank slate. You have no personal experience. You only have the context of whatever you might have seen on social media or whatever you might have heard from your friend or that you might have read online. So from that very beginning, you are being shaped into the person or the trader that you're going to become. And I think the ego, a big part of it comes from, number one, having some sort of personal experience where you perhaps do the wrong thing that produces a favorable outcome, or you achieve some sort of fast result, right? Because once you get that firsthand experience and you see that result and you get that first taste of like, oh, I made some money in the markets. I made my first $10, $100, $1,000. A withdrawal hit the bank. I'm feeling good. And you start allowing that to shape the way that you look at the markets and the way that you think about the markets. It kind of takes away from the real risk that exists inside of the market, because you're looking at it now from a skewed perspective of thinking, I'm kind of the best. And that is the reality. A lot of people get stuck in that trap and in that narrative. The second thing that I really think influences people and the ego and the development of the ego when it comes to the markets is when you step into some role of leadership. Okay, I'm speaking specifically right now to the people that have been trading for a while. Let me go ahead and let me turn the light on so you guys can see me a little bit better. But I'm talking to the people that have been trading for some time or that may be building the business. When you step into a role of leadership and you have the ability to influence other people, I encourage you to keep your intentions in check with the type of expectations and the picture that you're painting, because here's what I see happen so often. Somebody decides to get started because of this idea that they're going to be able to learn how to trade and get funded and achieve some level of success in a very short amount of time. And so what happens when that success seems fleeting? When they get started, they take your word for it, they trust you, and then they don't get the result for whatever reason that might be. Is it possible for that result to be accomplished? Absolutely. I've seen some really incredible things happen inside of the markets and inside of this company as well. But if your intentions aren't in check, even if that person does get started and they achieve whatever level of success they thought they were going to achieve in that short amount of time as a new person, what do you think that does to that individual moving forward? What kind of foundation has now been set for that individual that achieved the fast results? Their ego is not going to be in check. And then once the consistency isn't there and they get that harsh reality of blowing an account or making a mistake inside of the markets, well, that's just a downward spiral. And you really don't want to be the person responsible for setting somebody up with that kind of mindset. So I think it's a balance of both. It's the firsthand experiences that results in the development of the ego, but it can also be, especially with how this industry is, the way that someone gets started and what that picture looks like. And I'm sure that you know this as well, Mike, working with all the people that you have and the amount of impact that you've been able to make. I'm sure that you've seen both sides of it, but I know that you've also seen what happens when someone does get started with the right intentions and the right expectations, and they actually make great things happen.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you're saying, man. It really does come down to intention. And I would say that most people haven't been taught the process of failure, right? Coming into the markets, the one thing because here's the thing, I can give you a guarantee right now. I will give you a guarantee right now. And I can guarantee you that you're going to get punched in the face. That's the one thing I can tell you 100%. Like, you're going to get bodied by the markets, whether it's monetarily, whether it's emotionally, whether it's going to test your patience, but there's going to be something in you that will get pressed on by pain. That will happen. And in this process, that's the one thing that I think most people are not prepared for, is getting punched in the face, is falling, is that process of failure. And I, for example, had no idea the kind of learning, not even a learning curve, but how you have to change, right? How you have to grow through things. And I was blessed enough to come from a skateboarding background my whole life. So it was the same. This was just the same thing, but instead of physical pain, it was just emotional, spiritual, financial. It was every other version except for physical, and even physical because my sleep definitely took a massive hit. So building upon what Zachary was just talking about, which is the intention of how you start this or how you expose this to somebody else, this is kind of that check, right? I think for these kind of conversations are almost like, here's an intention check, here's an expectation check. Let me bring you back to reality, not so much dropping your belief systems, because I think believing in yourself and believing in the limitlessness of trading is essential, but also you need to understand it's more process based rather than outcome based. And I know that's something that we both agree on. It's just, it's not so much, trading isn't how much you make day by day, right? It's who you become over a period of time. And so understanding, okay, who am I becoming in this space? I know we talked about a couple of things, and one thing I want to bring up is when you're coming into trading, did it take you a while to know what your trading style was going to be, your trading approach, not on the technicals, but in terms of how much are you risking, like aggressive, conservative? Like, what did that look like for you? And how do you think, how can someone structure that for themselves? Because we have a lot of people on here right now, and they might be following someone's plan who isn't for them. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that?
100%. I think that a trading plan, it is something that's going to be unique to you. Seeing the development of my plan over time, there are certain things that are a constant. So for example, I've got to be in the right state of mind to even approach the charts. You know, there are so many times looking back where I could have avoided unnecessary losses or unnecessary mistakes if I just allowed myself to apply the discipline of not taking that trade or waiting until I was in a different environment, whether that be physically or mentally. But when it comes to the evolution of the plan, a big part of it is getting to know yourself. It's just like you said, it's not necessarily the outcome, right? It is the process of how you are arriving at that outcome, of who you want to be and what type of result you want to create. It starts with taking an objective look at who you are as a person, really examining, are you an aggressive person? Are you a conservative person? Are you the type of person that resonates with the idea of diversification and having a little bit over here and a little bit over here and a little bit over here so that if something hits, you're winning? Or are you the type of person that would rather do vivid research, create that confidence, and really go aggressive into a particular position so that if that trade hits, it can make a significant difference? I was talking with Jordan Morgan the other day, and we were having a really good conversation about how the small wins that come through the daily discipline of following your personal plan of action and applying it, they're going to make a difference in your life in so many different ways. But the big wins, the ones that are actually impactful and that can be potentially life-changing, they come from that compounded effect of those small wins and the consistency that you build up over time. Because I really don't think it matters if you're an aggressive person or a conservative person. You can apply the same type of approach, the same type of strategy, and you can win inside these markets. But the biggest difference is going to be whether or not you are the type of person that is willing to apply that daily discipline. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? Just as one example. At first, you don't get the six pack. You don't get the nice shoulders and biceps or whatever type of beach body that you're looking for, right? But you got to go and you got to put in the reps. You got to show up every day. And it's not just lifting the weights, it's the diet, it's the sleep, it's everything. It's a compound effect of those small wins consistently over time. So in order for you to be able to really create a plan that works for you, there are a couple of different suggestions I would like to make. First and foremost, start by examining your belief systems. Okay, and I'm really talking about your belief systems related to money, related to the markets, related to life. Because here's what I've realized. One of the biggest things that held me back on this journey was a subconscious belief that I was not worthy of making money inside of these markets. And where that belief came from, when I really dove in and when I really looked at the root of it, it came from years of conditioning through the education system, through my relationships. And it really took me some time to realize that everything I had been taught about needing to work long hours, work hard, build someone else's dream, all these stereotypical things, it was contradicting at a core level what trading was and what trading means. So many people I see, and I was there for some time as well, they get started in this industry, and perhaps you may be working a job, or you may have a career of some kind. And you come into this industry with the expectations of, I want to be a full-time trader. But you don't even know what that looks like. You don't even know what that means. It's like your idea and your paradigm of being a full-time trader is leaving your job or your occupation so that you can be in front of the charts 40 hours a week. Like that is not what being a full-time trader is at all. So start by examining your beliefs, because at the core, that's going to help you transform your trading results.
Let's get into that for a second. There's a lot of things you just said. You dropped a lot of, I think, you dropped a lot of value right now. And I'll let you guys take some notes on that and digest a little bit. But what does that mean? There's this, I've heard of this since the beginning of time, and I even said this. But what does being a full-time trader, what does that even mean? Like, I have my definition of it. You have your definition of it. But I mean, and I'm sure, like, do you guys want to know, like, what does this mean? What is being a full-time trader? What does that mean to you, Zachary?
Well, for me, the definition of full-time trading, it's evolved. In the beginning, when I was creating my plan, right? Creating my trading plan, what does it mean? What will it look like when I've achieved success in trading and I can call myself a full-time trader? Originally, I thought it was looking at the charts 40 hours a week, right? Because of where I came from. I thought that if I could get out of creating income through working for somebody else, and I could replace that by investing all of my time and my effort and energy into being in front of the charts and looking at the markets and trading, that was what was going to make me a full-time trader.
You know, it's funny. I thought the same. It was like, being a full-time trader means putting 40 hours into trading. So like, even that is a reflection of backwards thinking, where it's like more time input means, you know, it is what it like, it means, oh, okay, this is what I dedicate my life to now. When I don't think, I think that if you're putting 40 hours into trading now, I think you're doing something wrong. Like, I would say, and I don't want to, you know, speak in absolutes, but I just don't see a scenario when you're at a point where you're at a high level of understanding. I don't see a time where you're trading for 40 hours. That I just don't, I don't know how you would even do that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's part of that process, right? And I'm going to give a couple of different scenarios, and then I'll bring it back to the original, the original idea of what does a full-time trader even mean. But, just reflect on this or drop a 1 in the chat if any of these relate to you. So scenario number 1, You know, you are somebody that stares at the charts all day. You're just always there, always feel like you need to be looking at the markets. You don't want to miss out on the opportunities. It just so happens that that one time you stopped paying attention to the chart, the trade just happened to set up, and you're like, man, this is why I need to just be in front of the charts all the time. Okay, another scenario. This is one that I experienced quite often in the early stages of my journey. So, scenario number 2. You may be the type of person that intentionally, when you're out socializing with other people, or you're supposed to be doing something else, you're the type of person that thinks that that is the prime time to look for a trade. It's like, yeah, I know that we're out for dinner right now. I know that Thanksgiving dinner is about to be served, but like, I just gotta put this trade on real quick.
But first year, like, yeah.
It's like, yo, I know we are
I'd be
about
at the
to
gym.
go in.
I'd be at the gym. And hold up, let me before I do this set, let me just. I could have a trade right now. You never know. Yeah, that's so funny.
And then you got the weights in one hand, you got your phone propped up, and you're just like watching it, and you're not even paying attention to what you're doing. You're just like watching the chart. Scenario 3. You're the type of person that, because you're in front of the market so often, you're just pressing buttons all the time. You're the individual that you might be up for the day, or you might be up for the week. You know, you followed your plan, you traded within your trading window in that specific period of time, but you wanted more. You thought that the market still owed you something for the day or for the week. And so you went looking for that last opportunity, but guess what? After you pulled the trigger, you wiped out all your gains, and you're sitting there looking at it like, yo, why did I have to go back to trading today? Like,
Deletes MT4.
I would have been so much better off if I just did the things that I said I was going to do. But here I am, reflecting on my whole life because I needed to fill some sort of addiction. Okay, if any of those scenarios related to you, that's a good thing, because it gives you a starting point to work with in the development of your plan and in the clarification of what full-time trading really means for you. It's like what Mike was talking about earlier. You could be following somebody else's plan, whether it's risk management, whether it's your entries, your exits, your style, whether you scalp or day trade or swing trade. You could be following somebody else's plan, but it doesn't even relate and resonate with the type of person that you are. And so every time that you're approaching the markets, even if you're experiencing success, just imagine what would happen if you actually got into your own groove and your own style and your own unique personal plan. There are billions of us here on the planet.
100%.
And while we've got similarities, at the end of the day, we are all different. We are all unique. We all have our own purpose. And so you really have to, like we said at the beginning of this call, leverage people with experiences, opinions, and stories and things as a stepping stone to help you get to that next level. But as much as you might want to trust something, always verify it. You always got to put into your own process and see how it works for you. And if it doesn't resonate, or if you're really not feeling it, don't be afraid to make changes. Because at the end of the day, like we were talking about, the whole idea of creating the trading plan, it evolves. It doesn't have to stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
As you grow, as you improve, it's okay to make changes and to have your trading plan transform alongside you.
I know a lot of people, and obviously we're speaking from experience working with students. Confidence is one of those things that most people don't have when they come into trading. How could you, and so we lean on others to replace confidence with risk, with the technicals, with the approach. And I'll tell you what, guys, the number one confidence booster in trading is your own evidence.
Mhm.
That's the number one confidence booster. And that's going to come from trading your plan. That's going to come from deviating from a structured plan that someone else has given you. And if you realize something that Zachary and I have in common is we're not telling you what to think. We're giving you questions so you can ask yourself and come to your own conclusion on how to think. So it's not about, hey, listen to me. It's more so like, hey, consider this question about yourself. And those are the essentials to doing this long-term, surviving, right, until eventually you get to the thriving. But most people don't get through the survival period. You said something earlier, and I remember I just wrote this down. I wanted to share it. We've made some analogies to the gym, and I think it's a good place. Most people, I think, can relate to that. But the charts, guys, look, the charts are the workouts, but the psychology is the nutrition. That's how I can relate it to you. You know, we can go to the gym all day, every day, but the true growth doesn't come from the lifts, right? The true growth doesn't come from, you know, your 1 rep max. It doesn't come from the vanity. That your true growth comes from what you do in the kitchen, right? How you're cooking in the mind. So something to just think about. You know, oftentimes we give so much time to the charts and we stay there, but I'll tell you what, the charts are comfortable.
Yeah.
The charts are very comfortable because you're looking at everyone else. Remember, the charts is a reflection of institutional and retail investors. So when you're looking at the charts, that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with everybody else. And that's why we look at that the most. Now I'm going to go a little deep here, but it's the same reason why we consume. We look at social media because it's everybody else's opinions. It's everybody else's lifestyle. You can judge and you can observe as much as you want about everybody else. But how much time do we spend thinking about our own thoughts, right? That's called metacognition. How much time do we spend reviewing our own actions, the actions and the lack of actions? And so all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I don't want to go there. wait, what I did today, what I did right or wrong? No, let's just keep looking at the charts because it's got to be in the strategy, not in, you know, who I really am. And so just a couple of things to consider, you know, in the term when we're talking about risk management, trade management, those are some things that I would keep in mind. Now,
What you just said was huge. Like the idea of really taking a look at your daily actions and what you're doing. And it relates to trading so often. And I know that you've experienced this without even you confirming it. I know that you've experienced this where you've taken a trade and it lost, and perhaps it was a bigger loss than it should have been. And it was so painful.
oh yeah,
So you're like, yo, I'm not even going to look at that pair anymore. Like I'm not even gonna look at that chart. I remember Euro AUD 2018. I got burned so hard that I didn't look at Euro AUD for the next 2 years.
Oh man,
Okay.
I had that.
And
Yep.
well, I was just gonna say that is where the biggest lessons come from, though.
Mhm.
Being able to actually look back at, well, what happened? What did I do that created that outcome?
Mhm.
It can either be a loss or it can be a lesson. And you have to allow yourself to really push past that challenging point of looking at potential mistake that you might have made or something that you did that deviated from your plan. Because at the end of the day, that's where the growth comes from. That's how you get better, is by looking at what you actually did and having a way to track that process as well, whether it's in a physical form. I like printing out my charts. I think that there's a different level that comes with being able to look back on like the 1 minute time frames and those really sweet entries that they go away after a little while. You can't see the data anymore.
Mhm.
Or if you are more of a digital person or more of a hybrid person, you know, you've got amazing tools like what you just created recently with the My Trading Desk, right? There are so many different ways to have that plan. You just got to actually have the discipline to follow through.
I mean, you there's something you said, and to just kind of summarize, it's really where you felt the most pain is probably where you're going to get the most growth. Like that's, and you just have to really, you just got to really be able to own it and go, all right,
I did that.
let's go, let's go look at this thing. And whether it's sometimes it's financial, you know, and it's something that you weren't prepared to lose. Sometimes it feels like everything that you built up crumbled in one instant. You know, I've definitely had those kind of moments, and they've been at from different levels. There's a phrase that I heard recently that I love. It says like poverty, you know, the reason you're still poor is because you're not done learning what poverty has to teach you. Give me a second. I think the dog is having a nightmare or something. But 100%, it's like the reason you're still poor is because poverty still has something to teach you. And there's certain lessons, and I've had, you know, $100 lessons, and those prepared me for more.
Larger one.
4-figure lessons, and those prepare you for more. And so it scales. And sometimes when you start to have repeating lessons, that's when you really need to start paying attention. When all of a sudden you're like, why am I here again? It's like, okay, there's clearly something, there's clearly some character trait, not even the actions, but the character trait or belief systems you have to rewire. So it's something that I would really consider, you know, going forward. If you had similar types of losses, it might not even be the type of money, but like the way in which you're losing. And this comes back to, you know, Bob Proctor. It's not just what you do, it's the way in which you do things. And that's not just the nice ways, the good things, but it's also the other ways. Because sometimes we're not taking losses financially, but you're breaking character. And breaking character, honestly, is more painful than losing money. So those are the things that you want to document, you want to keep track of. And those make some pretty, I think once you can own it, it's like ownership is probably one of the most valuable resources that you can have. It's just ownership over your experience. Because I mean, I don't even know how many losses I've taken in the market. Like the amount of lost trades, it's got to be in like the thousands, you know? I've probably lost over 1,000 trades easily. I have to. Like, there's no way I haven't lost 1,000 trades, if not more. And the thing is, there's probably the majority of those losses, I actually probably didn't get as much back as I could have. And it was because I didn't go back and I owned that moment. Like a trading loss, cool. If you don't actually go back and own it, and you can take as much as you can out of that trade. Like just because you lost money doesn't mean it doesn't have anything else to give you. Usually when you've taken a loss is what has the most to give you. So like if you lost this week, last week, if you have some type of track record, a MyFX book, your own trading like journal, if you're using My Trading Desk, like that's where all the value is. It doesn't matter the nuggets that Zachary is dropping here. The most you're going to get from is your own experience. Zachary can say all the perfect things, and you're still going to go and put your hand on the stove. It is what it is. Some of us don't learn like that, especially men. Like we're just like we just like to go and like there's FAFO. You know, if you guys don't know what FAFO is, I'm sure you guys, someone can drop it in the chat, but there's a ratio, guys, FAFO. You all can figure it out. I know you're smart. And there's a line. And so in trading, we tend to, you know, we enjoy pain sometimes, but I mean, I know we've been here for about an hour or so. And I think there's like one more thing I wanted to talk about. And I want to hear your thing, and we talked a little bit about consistency and the boom and bust style of trading. Now look, there's good and bad to both, right? And just like everything. And I heard a quote not too long ago, and it was, fortunes are made by taking a lot of risk with a little bit of money. Fortunes are maintained by taking a little bit of risk with a lot of money. And I think it was Charlie Munger that said that. Because when you have nothing, you're not risking a lot. You have nothing to lose. And that makes you dangerous. And that's a massive advantage of having nothing. But when you continue like that, when you do have a little bit more, then you have a lot more to lose. And I think those are the behaviors that sometimes we don't change. You know, we have, like, I've experienced that, and I've had students that have gotten to levels they've never been at, but then the same high risk behaviors stay, and all of a sudden your losses are much bigger because you've never been there before. And so how does that really tie in with the building out of a consistent trading rather than a boomer bust style? What do you think about that?
I think a big part of it ties in with the previous topic we were discussing of having your plan evolve alongside you as you grow, because part of developing the consistency and actually having results that over time are getting better and better, regardless of the losses that happen, is knowing, of course, when not to trade, but knowing when is actually a good time to put that trade on, and to put it on in such a way where you're not losing more than you can afford to. And so what I think happens, and what I've experienced as well, is that as we progress and as we learn, we get comfortable being at a certain level, because we might be there for some time. We might be trading a specific lot size. We might get used to taking $50 losses, $100, $200, whatever the number might be. And we might be in that mode and in that phase of our trading for some time. I think about what happens on the charts. Sometimes it just consolidates and liquidity builds up, right? You might be consolidating at a certain level, growing your capital and getting more liquidity, but you get comfortable taking a certain level of loss and having a certain level of gain. So what happens now when you expand and you get to that next stage and you start trading with a larger lot size, you get to move the decimal place 1 or 2 times. Are you mentally prepared yet to take those losses? You might be somebody that's used to risking a full percent. And that 1% right now, at whatever dollar sign amount that might be, you could be comfortable and you could be okay with taking that loss and taking it disciplinedly. Mm-hmm. But now, once you move the decimal place and that 1% risk is substantially larger, monetarily speaking at least, than what it used to be, I know that for some people, and even for me, the first time that I really felt it, I was not mentally or even emotionally prepared to take that loss. Yeah. And so I think that a really good strategy to avoid that, tying in with the idea of having your plan evolve, is being okay with lowering your risk. Just like you talked about, the preservation of capital, the fortune being maintained by having capital and taking small risks. It's okay to drop the risk down and not risk that 1%, but instead start risking 0.5% or 0.25%, because the magic happens through consistency over an extended period of time. If you get used to taking that lot size and you eventually build up that emotional and that physical tolerance, then yeah, have your plan adjust, adapt, do what you need to do. 100%. But I think that a lot of people feel like they're failing if they have to decrease their risk. But understand, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
I have a good perspective for you guys. if you're decreasing your risk percentage, that's usually a good thing. Because look, here's why. You can decrease your risk if your capital is going up. So instead of like, okay, I need to make, 5-10% a week or a month or whatever numbers that everyone's just made up for whatever reasons, the goal shouldn't be so much, especially now that we have more leverage opportunity, right? The ability to work with more capital has never existed like it does in 2023. It's never existed this way.
Mhm.
And Zachary started out with something important, which was just realize where you are. Like realize that the moment in life in which we are right now, 2018, we would not be having a conversation about acquisition of capital. We would be like, well, I'm making $600 a month and I'm putting, $37 into my trading account every week. Now it's
Hey, let's go P6.
like, you know what I'm saying? Now it's like, okay, cool. My skills can give me access to more money. Awesome. So guess what? When you're funded 200, 500, 1 melon, when you're funded at these levels, hey, 0.25% is a lovely place to be. Even less, because think about it like this. Okay, you have 100K, hypothetically. You do 5% in a month, that's 5K. Fantastic. You have 1 million. You do 0.5%, right? 0.5%, and that's 5K. Okay. Does making 0.5%, does that sound like something that you've done before? Probably. So all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. Oh, trading is not that hard anymore. I don't have to shoot for some crazy percentages, which you shouldn't be in the first place. But it's like, okay, so what happens is our limited mindset to money, our limiting beliefs towards capital, because we just haven't experienced it, most people. That's why we're looking for percentages. But all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I can do a 3-to-1 in a month. I can do a 5-to-1 risk reward throughout the month. Like I can collectively make 5-to-1 happen in a month, and that'll cover X amount. You're like, huh. So my goal isn't really, I got to be some insane trader. I have to be hitting all these crazy percentages. It's really mostly, can I just trade responsibly, acquire, build up my trading account in whichever way you want to do that, so that it doesn't require so much work to actually, experience trading. Because if I tell you, look, you have 10K to work with, give me 5K out of this, that's hard work. And you have 30 days. It's like, what? Wait a minute. I need to do 50% in a month. That's pressure. That leads to accounts being blown. But if it's like, hey, here's a melon, right? And 5K, that's the outcome. And you have no time limit. Oh, okay. All of a sudden your risk exposure is virtually nothing. 0.25% risk, you hit a 2-to-1, that's 5K. So all I'm doing is I'm shifting the perspective of capital, percentages, risk to reward. And now the question is, okay, well, how do I get to that level? How does that happen? And do you trade the same way? Do you trade the same risk percentages with different types of accounts? And that's my question. I want to hear your thoughts on this is, what is the difference of trading, your own money, trading, let's say you're wanting to qualify for a funded account. And then let's say you are funded and now you're trading a funded account. Are there different approaches that in your experience, or how do you, what do you think about that?
I think that at the end of the day, there's a lot of power
and a lot of potential that comes through leveraging other people's money in whatever way that might look. I always believe, though, that at the end of the day, the goal should be for you to amass your own capital and to have your own foundation in place. Whatever that plan might look like for you, using a funded account to compound a percentage of that, withdraw a percentage of that for your life, withdraw a percentage of that for your own trading account. There are many different ways you can structure it, but bringing it back, there's a lot of power in it, because when I first got started with trading, and since we got started around the same amount of time, the opportunities that exist today, it was not the same. It was like, let me see how I can get $500 and throw it in an account, or $1,000 and throw it in an account.
My rent.
Like that. So it's a very different environment right now. So my suggestion would be, don't take it for granted, but at the same time, be very intentional with what it is that you're actually looking to accomplish if you do go that route of getting a funded account. Because I know that when you get started, there's always a fee, and yeah, that fee might be a couple $100, and you might lose the account or lose the challenge or whatever, and you may be thinking, well, it was only a couple $100. I might have lost it in my own trading account. But shift the perspective. Was it just a couple $100, or was it an opportunity? Especially for those of you that have gone through phases and getting funded and then losing it. Yeah, it might have just been a couple $100 that you paid to get access to that, but was it just that couple $100, or was it actually the opportunity that was lost because of certain things that you did or didn't do to maintain that? But yeah, just to bring it back, always work towards having your own foundation as well, because at any point and at any time, those opportunities and the accessibility, it could change, it could shift. So just like there's that whole idea of never putting all your eggs in one basket, it's kind of the same thing with your trading and with your investments. Accept responsibility for yourself, for your circumstances, for your finances, and work towards having an account that is yours